Recap: Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 869, Chapter ready. Hunger crept through Dingping's body like a restless beast. It was only natural. For those who cultivated the path of body arts, the furnace that fueled their strength was none other than food itself. Flesh, bone, and blood drew their energy from every grain and every bite consumed. Yet Dingping had endured an entire day and night without eating. Now that he had begun cultivating a body art, the hunger struck him with fierce urgency. Linghan burst into laughter when he saw the boy's expression. "Let's eat first," he said casually. With a flick of his sleeve, he retrieved ingredients from the mysterious black tower. In a matter of moments, flames danced beneath a cooking pot, and the air filled with a rich and mouth-watering fragrance. The aroma drifted across the quiet riverside like a tempting spirit. Dingping swallowed hard. His stomach growled uncontrollably. When he finally took the first bite, it was as though a dam had burst. Piece after piece of meat disappeared into his mouth with astonishing speed. The boy devoured the meal with a kind of desperate joy, as if each bite restored a fragment of the strength he had nearly lost forever. Watching him eat with such enthusiasm, Linghan couldn't help but smile. The sight reminded him of someone else. Who knew? The little girl who once followed him everywhere, always searching for meat like a mischievous cub. Linghan's gaze drifted toward the distant sky. "I wonder how that little girl is doing in the immortal realm," he thought quietly. "She should still be eating plenty of meat, right?" A faint smile touched his lips. By the time he saw Hu Niu again, she would no longer be that small, wild child. She would have grown into a graceful young woman. A girl changes 18 times before reaching womanhood. Linghan chuckled softly to himself. Would she still cling to him and call him uncle the way she used to? Lost in these wandering thoughts, Linghan sat silently for a while before finally beginning his own meal. His time to shatter the sky and ascend was drawing near. Once he stepped into the immortal realm, he would stand beneath the same vast heavens as his family once more. No matter how far apart they were now, the day of reunion would eventually come. Meanwhile, Dingping glanced at his master with confusion. The food was unbelievably delicious, far better than anything he had ever tasted in his life. Yet Master seemed distracted, almost indifferent to the feast. Dingping immediately came to a conclusion. His master must have eaten such delicacies countless times before. Compared to someone like him, who had lived in the clan all his life, Linghan must have long grown accustomed to such luxuries. After the meal, warmth spread through Dingping's entire body. Strength surged through his limbs like a rising tide. Without wasting a moment, he began cultivating the Nine Dragons Tyrant body art. His breathing slowed. His muscles tightened. The energy he had absorbed from the food circulated through every inch of his flesh. After completing a brief session of cultivation, Dingping stood up and walked toward the enormous rock that had once seemed immovable. Taking a deep breath, he bent his knees and lifted. The result stunned him. The rock rose from the ground. His strength had increased by more than 10 times, and this transformation had occurred in only a single day. Even more astonishing was that the improvement was not merely raw muscle power. His skin had grown tougher. His bones felt harder. His body had become far more resilient than before. These changes could not be seen with the naked eye. Yet Dingping could clearly feel them within himself. Linghan nodded in satisfaction. "At present," he said calmly, "your body cultivation already possesses the strength comparable to the third layer." He paused slightly before continuing. "However, your skeletal structure is extremely unusual. Because of this, when you unleash your strength, you can amplify it 100-fold. In terms of explosive force, your power is comparable to someone who has condensed origin power at that level." Dingping's eyes widened. Linghan waved his hand lightly. "Go," he said. "Return home and rest well. Come here every afternoon to cultivate." He added casually, "When the time comes for me to leave this place, I will naturally take you along." Dingping immediately bowed deeply. "Yes, master!" His voice trembled with excitement. From the depths of his heart, joy surged like a roaring river. Not long ago, he had believed his life was over. With a crippled spirit base, he had thought himself destined to become nothing more than a useless burden. Yet now, a new path had opened before him. The Nine Dragons Tyrant body art. Once cultivated to its peak, the practitioner would wield the strength of 9 true dragons. Just imagining such power made Ding Ping's blood boil with anticipation. He could hardly wait to return to the Ding clan and witness the expressions of those who had mocked him. As for Ling Han, in Ding Ping's heart, the man had already become a figure worthy of absolute reverence. After spending merely 1 day together, he had already realized something profound. His master's power was far beyond imagination. Ling Han remained by the riverside after Ding Ping left. His eyes slowly closed as he extended his divine sense outward. Through his connection with the Empire's totem, his awareness spread across the entire small town like an invisible net. Every street, every rooftop, every hidden corner, nothing escaped his perception. He was waiting for the corpse boss to appear once more. But that was not his only purpose. He was also testing Ding Ping. Talent and determination were important qualities for any cultivator. Ding Ping possessed both, but those traits alone only determined whether someone could become powerful. They did not determine what kind of person he would become, a hero or a monster. Ling Han had no intention of nurturing a devil with his own hands. Allowing Ding Ping to return home this time was a test of the boy's heart. After suddenly regaining strength, after being able to stand tall once more, would he guard his own character, or would power corrupt him? Meanwhile, Ding Ping had already returned to the town. Before long, he arrived at the gates of the Ding clan residence. The large manor stood proudly in the center of the town, its towering walls symbolizing the clan's authority. Ding Ping walked forward openly and confidently. "Young master!" The 2 guards at the gate greeted him. Yet the expressions on their faces were filled with mockery rather than respect. 6 months earlier, Ding Ping had finally awakened his spirit base, but the result had been devastating. It was crippled. A spirit base that could not cultivate was worthless. In today's world, what value did brute strength alone possess? For days now, the elders of the Ding clan had been discussing this matter. Their decision would soon be announced. Ding Ping would be stripped of his position as the clan's first heir. There were far too many younger talents within the clan to choose from. A plucked phoenix was not even as good as a chicken. Why should anyone continue to show respect to someone whose fall was already inevitable? Ding Ping's eyes swept across the 2 guards. His voice grew cold. "What kind of attitude is that?" "What attitude?" One guard replied with feigned confusion. "Young Master Ding, what sort of attitude would you like us to show?" He sneered openly. "In a few days, your position will fall lower than that of a servant, so you should cherish these final days and enjoy the last bit of glory that comes with being called young master." Insolence! Ding Ping raised his hand. "Pa!" The slap rang out sharply. The guard was only at the body-refining tier. How could he possibly withstand Ding Ping's strength? He was instantly sent staggering. Clutching his burning cheek, the guard glared at Ding Ping and raised his halberd. "You dare hit me?" "And why wouldn't I?" Ding Ping replied coldly. "As long as I remain the young master of the Ding clan, I have the authority to discipline a servant like you." "Ha ha! Brother Ping truly has an impressive presence." A mocking voice echoed from within the manor. A young man slowly walked out. Ding Fei Wen. The moment Ding Ping saw him, flames of anger ignited in his eyes. Half a year ago, this clansman had followed him everywhere, calling him Big Brother Ding, with endless flattery. But the moment Ding Ping's crippled spirit base was revealed, the man's attitude had changed completely. Not only had he abandoned all respect, he had also mocked and insulted Ding Ping at every opportunity, a thoroughly despicable character. Ding Fei Wen laughed loudly. Beside him stood a beautiful young girl about 14 or 15 years old. Her figure had already begun to mature, her curves graceful and alluring. Even at such a young age, she possessed striking beauty. "Yuan Yuan?" The moment Ding Ping saw her, the name escaped his lips instinctively. The girl's face, however, was cold and distant. "Young Master Ding," she said calmly, "our engagement has already been cancelled." Her voice carried not a trace of warmth. "Please refrain from calling my name so intimately. It may cause misunderstandings." Her name was Ye Yuan. She had once been Ding Ping's fiancée. But 6 months earlier, when news spread that Ding Ping possessed a crippled spirit base, the Yi clan immediately terminated the engagement. To them, such a match had become a disgrace. Although the Yi clan was not as powerful as the Ding clan, they would never allow the precious jewel of their family to marry a useless cripple. Moreover, Ye Yuan herself possessed excellent martial talent. Her future was bright. Hearing her words, Ding Ping felt as if a blade had pierced his heart. He had truly liked her. Back then, Ye Yuan had treated him with warmth and gentleness. But ever since the engagement was broken, they had never met again. Before today, Ding Ping had believed she was being confined by her family, yet now he understood the truth. The tenderness she once showed him had merely been an act. His heart felt as though it had been sliced open. "Yeah, Brother Ping," Ding Feiwen added with a cruel smile. "Don't casually call her name. Yuan Yuan is now my fiancée." Seeing Ding Ping's pale expression, Ding Feiwen felt immense satisfaction. In the past, he had always lived under Ding Ping's shadow. No matter how hard he worked, his achievements had always appeared ordinary compared to Ding Ping's brilliance, yet had been patient. He suppressed his hatred and pretended to be a loyal younger brother. Power and influence were more important to him than pride. But now the situation had reversed. Ding Ping had fallen, and Ding Feiwen had been chosen as his replacement. There was no longer any reason to maintain the pretense. Now he could finally unleash the resentment that had hidden for years. Ding Ping's face turned even. "Yuan Yuan," he called again, his voice trembling. The girl standing before him felt like a stranger. She was nothing like the person he remembered. Behind Ding Feiwen stood two more young men. They immediately stepped forward and shouted angrily, "How dare you! The name of Brother Feiwen's fiancée is not something you can casually call." The wind of Whitewater Town drifted slowly through the courtyard, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and old stone. Beneath that quiet sky, Ding Ping's gaze slowly moved across the figures standing before him. Two familiar faces stood there. Ding Yuxin, Ding Xingwei. Once upon a time, these two had followed him like shadows. When Ding Ping spoke, they obeyed without hesitation. If he had told them to march east, neither would dare to glance west. But now, the two men stood with their chins raised high, their expressions dripping with arrogance. There was not the slightest trace of respect left in their eyes. Only mockery, only disdain. Ding Ping saw everything clearly, and deep inside, he understood the reason. His spirit base had been crippled. A crippled spirit base meant the path of cultivation was closed forever. Someone like that could no longer stand at the peak of the clan's younger generation. The title of Ding Clan's young master could no longer belong to him. Truthfully, Ding Ping had already accepted this fact. If the clan elders had come to him and formally asked him to relinquish the position, he would not have resisted. That was simply the rule of the cultivation world. Strength ruled everything. But what he had not expected was how quickly the people around him would change. The expressions on their faces were ugly. Too ugly. They had once bowed before him. Now they looked at him like he was dirt beneath their feet. Was this truly necessary? They were all members of the same clan. Did they really need to become so cold? So cynical? Just then, laughter rang out nearby. "Oh, right," Ding Feiwen suddenly said with great enthusiasm, as if remembering something wonderful. "I almost forgot to share a piece of good news." He lifted his chin proudly. "A few days ago, I went to the Crimson Sun sect to apply as a disciple." His smile widened. "And I've already been accepted." The moment those words fell, the surrounding air seemed to stir. The Crimson Sun sect, that name carried enormous weight. In this world, any force that could call itself a sect meant that somewhere within it stood a powerful expert at the spiritual infant tier. Such figures were practically legends to ordinary clans. And what about the Ding clan? Their greatest experts had barely reached the spiritual ocean tier. The gap between those two powers was like the difference between a mountain and a grain of sand. For Ding Feiwen to enter the Crimson Sun sect, that was not just good news. That was the kind of fortune that could elevate the entire Ding clan status. To the clan, this was no different from marrying a daughter into the royal palace and producing an imperial consort. No wonder the Yi clan had acted so quickly, arranging for Ye Yuan to become Ding Feiwen's fiancée without hesitation. After all, what kind of future awaited Ding Feiwen? When he emerged from the Crimson Sun sect one day, his cultivation would surely reach the spiritual ocean tier. Perhaps even the spiritual pedestal tier. And if fate truly favored him, he might even step into the legendary Flower Blossom tier. If that day came, he would become completely invincible within Whitewater Town. At that moment, Ye Yuan's voice rang out sweetly. "Brother Feiwen, you're incredible." Her eyes sparkled with admiration. Those words landed perfectly in Ding Feiwen's ears, and he straightened even further, basking in the praise. Nearby, Ding Ping watched everything unfold with calm eyes. Inside his heart, something slowly settled. At that moment, it felt as though a knot that had tightened for years had finally loosened. He suddenly understood something very clearly. Ye Yuan had never truly loved him. What she had loved was the position of Ding Clan's young master. What she had valued was the potential that the clan once believed he possessed. And what about himself? He had not loved the real Ye Yuan either. What he had loved was the gentle mask she had worn in front of him. Now that mask had fallen away. If that was the truth, then what was there to grieve over? Why should he feel sorrow for a woman who had never loved him in the first place? Was it worth it? No, not at all. As Ding Ping stood there, a strange calmness washed over him. Why bother arguing with these people? They were like frogs trapped inside a shallow pond. They had never seen rivers. They had never seen oceans. How could they possibly understand the vastness of the world? Ling Han had never openly revealed his identity. But Ding Ping could feel it. The man who had taken him as a disciple carried an indescribable aura of authority. Every movement, every word, radiated a power that ordinary people simply could not imitate. Just look at what had happened yesterday. In a single day, Ling Han had transformed him. His body had been reborn. His strength now rivaled the first layer of the element-gathering tier. If news of this spread, the Ding clan would probably faint from shock. And that was not even the most terrifying part. The Nine Dragons Tyrant body art, once perfected, that technique would allow him to possess the strength of 9 true dragons. 9 true dragons. Compared to that kind of future, what was the title of Ding Clan's young master? What was the glory of becoming a disciple of the Crimson Sun sect? They were nothing. In the blink of an eye, Ding Ping's state of mind completely changed. His temperament matured. The anger that had once burned in his chest quietly faded. Even though the others no longer regarded him as family, he still remembered that they had once grown up together. So he spoke softly. "Please, move aside. I would like to go in and rest." The moment those words were spoken, "Pooh!" Ding Yuxuan burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha!" Ding Xingwei followed immediately. Their laughter echoed through the courtyard. So that was it? He had surrendered already? Even if his spirit base was crippled, he still technically held the title of Ding Clan's young master. As long as the elders had not officially stripped him of the position, he remained the leader of the younger generation. Yet he had given up so quickly. At the side, Ye Yuan curled her lips slightly, revealing a careless sneer. Fortunately, she had broken off the engagement early. Otherwise, if she had married him and discovered this weakness afterward, wouldn't she have regretted it for the rest of her life? Ding Feiwen laughed loudly. But inside his heart, something was unsatisfied. He had admired Ding Ping for years. Now that the chance to trample him had finally arrived, how could he allow the matter to end so easily? Ding Feiwen slowly spread his legs apart. Then he pointed downward with a mocking grin. "Sure, you can pass, but you'll have to crawl under here. Do that, and I promise I won't bully you anymore." "Heh." Ding Yuxuan and the others snickered. Even the 2 guards standing nearby could not resist smirking. Every pair of eyes was filled with ridicule. They were openly mocking him. Ding Ping looked at them quietly. His gaze was calm, completely calm. Then he said slowly, "Don't block my path. Otherwise, you'll regret it." "Oh?" Ding Feiwen raised an eyebrow, his expression full of arrogance. "I'd like to see exactly how you plan to make me regret it." Without another word, Ding Ping stepped forward. His fists tightened. "If you think you can force your way through," Ding Feiwen snorted, "then you've greatly overestimated yourself." 3 years ago, he had awakened his spirit base. Now his cultivation had reached the 9th layer of the body refining tier. If the barrier to the element gathering tier had not been so difficult to break through, he would have already advanced, but that didn't matter. Once he entered the Crimson Sun sect, the elders there would guide him. With the sect's resources supporting him, breaking into the first layer of the element gathering tier would happen soon enough. Move. Ding Ping had already arrived in front of him. You think you can beat me? Ding Feiwen sneered. He moved first. Both palms shot forward in a swift strike. He knew Ding Ping possessed unusual strength. Back when they were younger, Ding Ping's raw power had already rivaled the 5th layer of the body refining tier. But that was all. Ding Feiwen only needed to avoid a direct hit. Once the fight truly began, his 9th layer cultivation would crush Ding Ping completely. Then, a sound exploded through the air. Hong, Ding Ping's fist, shot forward. It was fast. It was heavy. Pang, Ding Feiwen's palms were instantly forced apart, like paper torn by a blade. The punch continued forward without slowing. Then it slammed directly into Ding Feiwen's face. At that moment, the muscles of Ding Feiwen's body rippled violently, like waves spreading across water. The force blasted through him. His entire body was hurled backward through the air. Bang! He smashed heavily against a stone wall before bouncing off and collapsing to the ground. Pain exploded through his body. For several moments, he couldn't even stand. Silence. Absolute silence. Ye Yuan froze. Ding Yushuan froze. Ding Xingwei froze. Even the 2 guards stood there, dumbfounded. What just happened? That was Ding Feiwen, the strongest member of the Ding clan's younger generation, a cultivator at the 9th layer of the body refining tier. Yet he had been defeated with 1 punch. Years ago, Ding Ping's strange strength had indeed impressed everyone, but 2 years ago, Ding Feiwen had already surpassed him. That was why the clan had only allowed Ding Ping to keep the title of Young Master, because they still believed in his future potential. But now, the scene before them defied all logic. Ding Feiwen had lost. In 1 punch, Ye Yuan's beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Could it be that Ding Ping had been hiding his true strength all along? Otherwise, even if Ding Feiwen had been careless, how could he possibly lose in a single exchange? Meanwhile, Ding Ping slowly lowered his fists. Without saying another word, he turned and walked away with steady steps, as if nothing had happened. But only he knew the truth. Inside his chest, emotions surged like a roaring storm. That punch. He had endured it for half a year, for 6 long months. The humiliation, the disappointment, the bitterness, all of it had been buried deep inside. Today, that punch had finally been released. Throwing a punch was easy, but creating such an outcome, that had required something far greater. Inside his heart, Ding Ping cried out, "Master!" In his mind, Ling Han stood like a divine figure. Reverence filled his entire being. The treatment he had received from the Ding clan had already chilled his heart. Now he had only one thought left. Wait for Ling Han to finish his business. Then leave this cold and heartless place forever. His parents were long gone. His grandparents had passed away early. Though he had 2 uncles within the clan, for the past 6 months, they had completely ignored him. Behind him, Brother Feiwen. Only after Ding Ping had walked far away did Ye Yuan and the others rush forward to help Ding Feiwen up. That bastard! Ding Feiwen clenched his teeth, his face burning with humiliation. He actually dared to launch a sneak attack. I'm going to report this to the clan elders. I'll have them punish that bastard according to clan law. A sneak attack? Ding Yushuan quickly nodded. That's right. That bastard must have attacked Brother Feiwen secretly. Otherwise, how could he defeat Brother Feiwen in a single punch? Ding Xingwei nodded repeatedly as well. Hearing those words, Ding Feiwen suddenly glared at them fiercely. These idiots. Did they really need to keep repeating the fact that he had lost? Nearby, Ye Yuan's beautiful eyes flickered thoughtfully. Without saying anything more, she turned quietly. This matter had to be reported to her family immediately. Whitewater Town was about to hear news that no one expected. Ding Ping had changed completely.